live. All right,
Well, we're not really live, but
live enough.
Live
right?
enough.
Yeah.
We're both alive.
Oh,
We're alive.
I'm alive.
Alive and well.
I'm very alive. All right, welcome back to episode 2 of our podcast. We've got a good one. Guys being dudes.
Hey,
Welcome back.
first of all,
It's good to be here.
what's better than this, man? Guys being dudes.
All right, so where we left off last time, just to recap, our first episode was was really about how important development camps were. Talking about that initial phase, where that spark comes from when you're a high school athlete and you start taking yourself seriously. You get around recruiters and coaches at these development camps and
You have that aspiration to, you want to play college football.
Exactly. So we're going to pick back up the following year. So instead of the off season going into sophomore year, we're in the off season going into junior year. So we got tons of information and we're just going to dive right in it. So, yeah, where were you? What, bro? Come on, that was a good ass intro. All right, so obviously, junior year is going to be a really important year because this is the year where you're going to want more film and you're going to want better film, right? So you're going to need to elevate your game from, that sophomore year and everything that you were doing. You're going to need to continue to do that and do it at an even higher level for junior year.
Yep, absolutely. So that summer going into junior year is kind of when it's pretty much when things ramp up big time, especially in, the competition. So junior year, the second half of junior year is when things get really important because the second half of junior year, that's when signing day happens for that senior class. After signing day, all eyes are on you in the recruiting process. But it all starts with kind of, backtracking here. So that's summer going into junior year. So that last episode, we talked about, the development camps, for those first couple of years of high school, getting that, just getting that better technique.
And you're gonna have to carry that over into your junior year, and following up those development camps are going to be prospect camps. So can you tell us a little bit about what's the difference between a development camp and a prospect camp, and then what was your experience, if you remember, for this specific year? Because I know you can do these camps junior year
for multiple years.
Yeah.
And then if you have to take the route I did, which is very unconventional, even after your senior year, if you do a postgraduate camp, a postgraduate year, you get to go to these wonderful prospect camps again. But yeah, so development camp is exactly what it sounds like. It's to develop. This is early on. Not a lot of pressure here. It's all about you. It's not so much about the coaches. It's not so much about the schools that they represent. It's about you. It's about you getting better in your habits, your technique, your effort. And these prospect camps, going back to the development camps, they'll usually be like a week long. So a lot of people will stay overnight. I know for overnight camps, I did the Boston College one. This is a full week long, full development. And then I did the Blue Chip camp, which was in Massachusetts. This was an interesting one. We'll kind of dive into this a little more. But it was half development at the beginning and then half competition, kind of like a showcase. So more so like a prospect camp in the end. But yeah,
So at these prospect camps, are they still teaching you, fundamentals and developing that aspect, or is it more of like you're expected to kind of have those there now, and now we want to see you compete in drills and in practices?
So there is a little bit of teaching when you first get to them. It depends on which school you're at. It's like the first portion of the day when you're doing your position drills is they're going to run through the drills that they go through with their own team. So they want to teach you, their technique, and they want to see how fast can you pick it up. So that's the big thing there. And then, kind of talking more about prospect camps. So we talked that development camps are a week long, but these prospect camps, they're only one day. There's a reason they call them one-day prospect camps. You only have one opportunity, and it's essentially a tryout for the school that you're attending.
So that's the main difference. The development camp is more laid back, it's more teaching, versus the prospect camp is it's much quicker. They're running you through their stuff. They're measuring you against the other prospects that are there.
Exactly.
Yep, absolutely. So then, going into that, there's obviously going to be more competition at these camps, and more coaching as well. So is there still multiple different coaches at these prospect camps, or is it just the coaching staff of that team that invited you?
So at the prospect camps, it's mostly just that coaching staff of the team that invited you. Every now and then they'll bring in, like if you're at a bigger prospect camp, like for example, I did the Wake Forest prospect camp going into my prep year. They had a couple, so Wake Forest is a Power 5 school, Division 1A, FBS. They had a couple 1AA schools there. If I remember correctly, I think they had Elon and then North Carolina Central, and then they had a couple D2s, couple D3s. But it's mostly going to be, for that specific school that you're at. That's the school that you're, basically trying out for. And it's, these guys are wanting to see if you can, how fast you can pick up on their coaching. And then the most important thing is, they want to see how you do during the competition. So I kind of want to take a step back and talk about that blue chip camp that I went to. So that was, half development. And
so
then
this is the camp going into your junior year?
Going into junior year.
This is one of them.
This is one of them.
How many did you do going into junior year?
So going into junior year, I did 2 development camps, and then I ended up doing 2 prospect camps. So the 2 development camps, so the BC one, that was my first development camp going into that summer. And that was kind of, to warm me up for blue chip, which I kind of consider blue chip, half development, half prospect. So the first half, was a development portion. Then the second half, the last few days, was all competition based. So these coaches want, they want to see, how competitive you are. They mostly want to see, how you're doing for O-line, D-line. It was board drills. It was one-on-one pass rush, just continuous. And oh my God, we did so many board drills. I'm like 90% sure I had a concussion at the end of the day, and I just didn't even think about it.
And that's how you know it's real. When you leave the camp with a concussion, that's how you know you're
well, it wasn't diagnosed, but my God, my last board drill, I was completely out of it. I mean, you're literally just smashing your head over and over again. But
if not concussion, contusion. Safe to say.
It was something. It was something. I was definitely brain dead after this camp. But I mean, you're young, you don't care. It's all about competing. It's all about beating the guy in front of you. That's the most important thing. So then after those 2 camps, I wanted to warm up, a little bit to these prospect camps. I wanted to get an idea. So the prospect camps are going to be most important the summer going into your senior season. This is when you need to attend, as many prospect camps as you can. But, junior year, going into junior year, I wanted to prepare myself for the prospect camps. So I wanted to do 2 prospect camps as practice. So I ended up going to the University of Maine, did their 1-day prospect camp, and then did James Madison University, drove down there the next day, believe it or not. It was a 16-hour drive from Maine down to Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Wow.
And I was
16 hours.
I was gassed. I slept in the car and
do a whole nother camp again.
To a whole other camp, and it's a full day. It's a grind. So these prospect camps, so they'll start out, there'll be it's a long day typically. So it starts out, everyone has to register. And you're kind of just sitting there for like, I'd say 2 hours during the registration. You're just waiting for everyone to sign in, and that's when the nerves are hitting you the most, and it's just like you want to go out there, you want to go hit someone if you can. Mm-hmm. And then each one will start off. They'll do your height and weight, and then you'll get you'll do your testing. So each one's the same. So you'll do your 40, you'll do your 5-10-5 shuttle. They'll test your vertical.
What was your best vertical?
Best vertical was so it was actually on, I don't know if you know the jumping pads as opposed to the jump and reach.
Yeah.
So it was on the jumping pad. So it's literally a pad that you jump off of and then you land on, and then it gives you a reading. So I had a 29-inch vertical. That was my highest. And keep in mind, I'm an offensive lineman, so cut me some slack.
That's not very good, is it?
Well, compared to like a skill guy, it's probably nothing crazy.
Hey, you don't need a vertical for what you did, right?
Yep, exactly.
You're just pancaking.
Yep.
No jumping involved.
And a funny story, actually. So I ended up doing a combine going into my junior year. And this is at Tabor Academy out in Marion, Massachusetts. Tabor with an O. They don't spell it like me.
It wasn't your relatives.
But no, not quite. But at this combine, you're basically paired off by position. But for some reason, I got stuck with like receivers and running backs. So it's like everyone's running the 40-yard dash, and they're like Jones 4.5, Terry 4.4. Tabor 5-1. Just like, come on, man. And the same thing happened on the 5-10-5 shuttle. They're like 4-3, Jones 4-5, Tabor 4-9. But then we got to bench press. And
that was your time to shine.
And that's when I went up to the skill guys.
Tom
and
got his payback.
I was like, take a seat, guys. I'm starting out with bench. So at high school combines, it's a little different. So for the bench, you do 185 as opposed to 225, which is what you'll do for your pro days going into the the NFL. So 185 at 17 years old, I got 31 reps at this camp at 185. I ended up actually having the bench title for that camp. I tied with someone else, so it was kind of a split title. But then I was like, yeah, I'll show you skill positions. I may be slow, but I can throw some weight around.
Absolutely. So talk about the mentality that you need going into these prospect camps, because you mentioned how these are more of like a tryout, right?
Exactly.
You're there to really show those coaches, why they should want you to be a part of their program. So, what kind of mentality do you need there to prepare yourself for that next level of competition where there are guys there that are trying to beat you, right? Mm-hmm. They're not there trying to, collaborate with you and just get better together.
They're not there to make friends.
Right. They're there to beat you out, especially, in your position group. So what mentality do you need for that situation compared to, a year ago, it wasn't really that intense?
So I wish I had kind of a different mindset going back, into these camps. I was always, pretty uptight going into these. I would sometimes, let the nerves just eat at me and be like, hey, this is a big deal. I have to bring it today. If I have a terrible performance today, that's it. The school's not going to be interested. Now, Jonathan, I did 13 prospect camps going into my senior year of high school. 13 of them. That's 13 different opportunities. That's a lot. Not a lot of people do that many camps. So it's like, I wish I was a little more loose going into these prospect camps and, being like, hey, if I have one bad rep, fuck it, man. Like, it doesn't even matter. All that matters is the next rep. I'm not going to let it affect me because I would let stuff like that affect me. It's like, if let's say my 40-yard dash, let's say I was like a tenth of a second off, I would let that get to me. Yeah. And
which is understandable. I mean, that's just performance anxiety, right?
Exactly.
This is what to remind people, you're training for this 6 days a week.
Exactly.
So this is the culmination of what, you're getting your fruits of your labor right here. So if you don't perform, naturally there's going to be some type of feelings involved with that.
No, absolutely. And then, I just wish. So my freshman year at UConn, one of my favorite coaches, Tyler Stockton, we called him T-Stock. He was a graduate assistant. He ran the scout team. And, freshman year, I was a red shirt. So naturally, a lot of first-year players, they're running the scout team. He had one rule, and his rule was give no fucks. And it made perfect sense because, you're a freshman, you're a scout team guy. You're going against the starters every single day of practice because you got to give them, their look for that opponent that you're going against that week. Mm-hmm. So,
so you're trying to mimic the team that you're facing.
You're facing. And, at UConn, I'm going against guys like, Julian Campini. He had a rookie mini camp invite. He was at Colts rookie mini camp. I'm going against, Kenton Adeyemi. Kenton was in training camp with the Browns. Foley Fatukasi, he's currently with the Jags right now. And then one of my favorite people, Cole Armsby. Cole was honestly one of the best D linemen I'd ever gone against. You're going against these guys every single day of practice as a freaking freshman. You know, I'm getting my ass kicked left and right.
They're just busting your ass, man.
And T-Stock would always say, hey, give no fucks. You know, because you're going to get your ass kicked, but you just got to get up and freaking hit him hard the next play. Just give him the best look possible. And gosh, I mean, obviously those guys are much more talented than me. They're throwing me around. But, you know, I'm just, because of that saying, you know, give no fucks, I was loose. You know, I was never uptight going against these guys. I didn't have that performance anxiety.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to, you know, T-Stock's coaching for him to instill that in you guys. You know what I mean? Instead of just letting you go out there and get your ass handed to you without that positive reinforcement, right?
Exactly. And then, so if I were to go back to do these prospect camps again, if I'm a high school kid, that would be my mindset. Give no fucks. I mean, dude, I'm doing 13 freaking prospect camps, you know, and you have to run, what, 2 40s at each prospect camp. So I'm running 26 40s. I'm running 26 5-10-5 shuttles. You know, I'm doing, you know, let's say on average you get, you know, 3 reps of one-on-ones each camp. So you're getting 39 total reps for the whole summer. You're obviously going to lose some. It doesn't matter. You know, you got to, if something bad happens, you know, just flush it. You know, stay loose, give no fucks. You know, that is...
And if you don't belong there, you know, I think you said this. If you don't belong there, that's something for a different day.
Exactly.
Right? That's something
it doesn't matter in that
later.
moment. That's up for the coaches to decide later on, but not that day.
Right.
That doesn't matter. That day is about you.
It's about you and just doing your job, doing it the best of your ability, because you're going to need that skill later on. You know, when you're say you do make it to a pro team's, you know, camp. Mm-hmm. You're going to need that mentality, because if you're going up against an all-pro guy and you're trying to make the roster, you have to have that resiliency. You have to have that mental toughness.
I mean, Jonathan, think about how many people that go to those, you know, NFL rookie mini camps. How many of them actually even make it to the training camp roster?
Right.
And then of those that make it to the training camp roster, you know, only 53 are going to make the active roster. And then, you know, think about all the people that are going to prospect camps. You got thousands of kids going to your camps every year. Guess what? At the FBS, there's only 95 scholarships, unless anything's changed. I don't know if the rules have changed on that. FCS, you're only looking at 65 scholarships. And then, you know, the rest of the positions on the team, you know, you might carry, you know, maybe a little over 100 people. The rest of those guys, they're going to be walk-ons. You know, not a lot of people are going to make it.
So what would you advise someone to focus on when they're in that exact same situation? You know what I mean? Like, are they just supposed to, you know, keep their dream in their head? Like, mm-hmm. You know, this is me. This is what I have to do. I want to play college football, and not kind of get so focused on, you know, the details of like, okay, this drill didn't go the way I wanted, or mm-hmm. or I'm getting my ass busted every play or something. Like, what, instead of them getting their head down about that stuff, what should they have top of mind through all of that, through every camp that they do?
So honestly, with this, there's a couple things. Definitely shoot for the stars. You know, I would say when you're thinking about a prospect camp, you know, pick a couple where it's like, hey, you know, like this is my dream. You know, this is kind of like my one where I'm saying, you know, fuck it, I'm just going to give it my best shot. So for me, my, you know, fuck it camps was definitely Wake Forest was one of them. Because, you know, I thought there was no way in hell I was going to play at Wake Forest. And then another one.
So were you scared when you went to that camp?
No.
Did you have a feeling of like, I don't belong here already, or were you know, how was that?
So it's actually funny you mentioned that, because the Wake Forest camp was actually my best camp I ever had. I ended up winning all my one-on-ones. And obviously at this camp, you know, the guys were definitely a lot bigger. But yeah, no, I ended up winning all my one-on-ones. Actually, I remember the first rep. The first rep, I ended up throwing the kid on the ground. And then that's when I knew. It was like, oh, I belong here.
Oh, absolutely.
And actually, crap, I forgot to mention. So we kind of talked a little bit about the structure of the prospect camps. So, you know, you start with the sign-in, you start with your measurables, get your height and weight, do all the testing. After that, you go into your, you'll do like an agility circuit. So this is meant to gas you. So it's like you rotate through stations, you do a ton of reps of like one drill in particular. It'll be, whatever it is, whatever that coach has for you. And then after the agility circuit, they're going to do, that little bit of coaching that we talked about. They're going to coach you the way that they coach their own players. So you'll break up by position, do that. Then after that, you get into the one-on-ones, which at the prospect camps, it's always going to be one-on-one pass rush. I forgot to mention, you're not wearing pads, buddy. At these prospect camps, you are not wearing pads whatsoever. And I mentioned.
So what is that?
I mentioned at Wake Forest, I threw the kid to the ground. We don't have pads on. So obviously, the O-line coach, he was glad that I threw him down, but at the same time, he's like, hey, man, you got to take it easy. We don't have pads on. But, I mean, the mentality of everyone at the camp, everyone's going balls to the wall.
Yeah,
they're playing like you're all playing like you have pads on. Like, you're all freaking, like, it's full contact.
Because you're there to show what you have, right?
Exactly. And then I've seen... Actually, at this Wake Forest camp, I saw a brawl break out between the running backs and the linebackers. They were doing their one-on-ones, and dude, oh my god, this running back!
It's like an episode of Hard Knocks. I'm just
he literally in my mind. And like you're supposed to make a move, so at running back, so that they're supposed to like maybe juke, spin, something. This dude literally lowered his shoulder right into this kid, freaking toppled over, and then this kid gets up. Starts punching. All the linebackers are coming to help him out. All the running backs are coming to help him out. It was like a bench clearing brawl. And O-line, D-line, we were like looking over like, shit, what's going on over there?
So like when you get into the drills where you're broken out by position, are you trying to impress that coach even more? Like, was that something that was in your head, or is that not really?
Yes, because this is going to be your position coach.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting because you have a certain person that's going to be recruiting you on each team. So there'll be a coach that's assigned to a certain territory. Yeah, there's a coach that's assigned to a certain territory, but at the end of the day, it's the position coach that's going to end up being your actual coach. Mm-hmm. So yeah, of course, when you know that's going to be your O-line coach as an offensive lineman, you're like, yes, this is I need to go really hard in front of this guy because this is the guy that's making the decisions at the end of the day. For
sure. I mean, hey, man, you got to produce when your number's called. In those moments, you got to produce. So that's a crazy, experience for athletes in that time period to get through and to deal with that pressure, because that pressure is good at the end of the day, and that pressure is not going to go anywhere because there's going to be pressure, at some point in your life in whatever you do, right? It's going to show up. You're going to have to perform for somebody. You're going to have to show somebody at some level who's making decisions that you're someone that they should want to have on their team, whether that's in an organization, on a team. So that's a great experience that you shared there. So going to the next camp, can you talk a little bit about the Sacred Heart camp? Because if I remember correctly from our conversation, this was the camp where you kind of went in there, and this was a smaller school, or?
Yeah, so Sacred Heart, they play in the FCS, so they're Division I AA. They play in the Northeast Conference. Not a bad program. I mean, they were just in the FCS playoffs a year ago. I actually attended their playoff game against Holy Cross. They're a good team. They're a good program for that level. But yeah, so I did the Sacred Heart camp. Actually, this was going into my senior year, so this is when I did that stretch of 13 prospect camps. So I did the Sacred Heart camp, a week following when I did the Old Dominion / Boston College camp. That was another crazy drive, by the way. So I think it was on a Saturday. I was in Norfolk, Virginia at Old Dominion. Did that prospect camp. Keep in mind, full day. Then I'm going to BC on Sunday. So driving up from Norfolk, Virginia back to Boston, and then doing another prospect camp that day. Just seeing everyone around me, they all had fresh legs. I was freaking gassed. Definitely, yeah, if I could give a piece of advice, break your camps out more. Don't do what I did there. Definitely break your camps out more. I would separate them by at least a couple days because you're going to need it. Fresh legs definitely make a difference going into those camps. But anyways,
talking about give no fucks.
Yeah, that's giving no fucks right for your body, for your recovery. That's giving no fucks right there. But anyways, kind of going back. So I did the Old Dominion and Boston College, much higher levels of competition. I did those camps, the week before going to Sacred Heart. So I get to Sacred Heart, And I'm looking at, at every camp, I mean, it's natural for all of us. We're going to size up our competition. At Sacred Heart, I'm sizing up the competition, and I'm thinking about, where I just was a week ago. It's like, dude, Boston College, the guys are like 3 times this size. It's like, this is going to be a breeze. The one-on-ones, this is going to be the easiest set of one-on-ones I have all day. Fuck no. Do not take any camp lightly. Never, ever take any opponent lightly. When we got to one-on-ones, there was a 5'11" interior defensive lineman I went against. And man, I was humbled fast. He pulled a quick, he kind of stepped inside, and then I ended up, no. He made a quick move outside, and then I ended up dropping my post foot, and then he ended up spinning inside and winning the rep. And I've never seen so much quickness, especially from, a 5'11" D tackle. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, he made me look silly. I lost that rep. And
but it's those things that kind of put things into perspective, right? Because you go to this camp, you're not expecting much in comparison to these other athletes that you just faced. But then
exactly.
that kid kind of served up that reminder. You can't take any opponent lightly.
You can't take it lightly because, if this was that kid's day to shine, maybe that kid, maybe he was someone who really thought that he was only going to be playing, like he could only play at that level. And, that day was like his shooting for the stars. That was his Super Bowl. Just like, I mentioned
that was his Wake Forest.
That was his Wake Forest. Because I know, I mentioned Wake Forest. That was me shooting for the stars. Because that's a Power 5 school. Maybe this kid was shooting for the stars. Maybe he didn't think he could play at Sacred Heart. And I'll tell you what, after seeing that kid, it wasn't just the one-on-one pass rush. I watched him go through all of his drills. The way this kid was able to bend, the way he was able to flip his hips, his quickness. I honestly thought he was someone that could play at the FBS level. Even though Sacred Heart's FCS, I thought he could have played FBS. I thought,
maybe that's just a situation where he didn't know he had that ability, or he didn't have people telling him yo, you can play here, or how to go about it.
Exactly.
So, absolutely. But I want to kind of shift now. And I want to kind of talk about in year, right? Because we're talking about this is in the off season. We're doing these.
So we're talking about junior year.
Yeah, in season, junior year, in season. Can you talk about how? Because you mentioned before, after signing day, once those seniors get signed, now the focus is on you, right? And that's when the competition is up even more. Yeah. So your film has to be elevated.
Yeah, even before that, it's like the junior season. So we're talking about the junior season itself. That film has to be, yes, as you mentioned, it has to be elevated. But during that junior season, that's when you start to get unofficial visit invites. So you get, the game visits. So that's when you get those invitations. So like my junior year, I ended up going to one game visit. So a game visit is exactly what it sounds like. You go to that school, you get there early in the morning. The coaches will they'll take you through a tour of their facilities. They'll have their academic, they'll have their guidance counselors there. They'll talk about the academics. They'll basically go through everything, that the school has to offer. And then you have free tickets to that football game that day, and you watch the game. And then this is a chance, this is just any chance to get in front of these coaches. That's going to benefit
you. Also throughout the year, that junior season, you're getting pulled out of class too by these coaches visiting you.
Yep. So yeah, this is later on. So after your junior season, you mentioned the focus does get onto you after signing day.
But I wanted to kind of to point one thing out. It's like these prospect camps are preparing you for that competition for the actual in season. Right, that you're going to face that year. Because the stakes are up at that point too, right? Because we talked about the importance of film. These prospect camps are giving you that extra confidence, right? When you're going to these prospect camps,
when you're going against the best competition,
you're going against the better competition. You're meeting these coaches. You're going through these coaches' drills, right? You're getting out in front of these, and
then when you go back to your high school,
like you said, you even went to Wake Forest, and you said I belong here. Like this isn't a mistake, right? So transfer that to actual in season, that prepares you to kind of really grab hold of that opportunity as well, which I think is a big thing to point out. Just the overall importance of these camps, both development camps. It's the same thing. The development camps prepare you for that sophomore year,
It elevates your play, and you put that on tape.
Your prospect camps are elevating your play junior season. So talk about, if you can. You might have actually already mentioned the false step. Did you talk about the false step yet?
No. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that actually.
Yeah.
That might have been in one of our blooper reels, or we were talking about the false step.
We had 2 or 3.
Yeah, we had like 6 blooper reels.
Those will not be released to the public.
At least not yet. We'll save those for different time.
We might make a video later, but
yeah. So going to that. So my sophomore year, I had a bit of an issue with the false step. So it was probably like a 6-inch step backwards before I even gained ground. And then actually at this blue chip camp that we talked about, at the beginning of the episode, there was a coach from Southern Connecticut State University, Tom Godek. Kind of talked through my problem with him. I think he's actually the head coach there now. He's been there for many, many years.
Shout out
to Tom Godek, one of the nicest human beings I've ever met.
One of the best coaches ever.
And he fixed my false step. So I told him what was going on.
He's one of the greatest coaches ever, right?
One of the greatest coaches. The GOAT. Tom Godek. Southern Connecticut State, baby. Let's go. But anyways, he talked me through the way I was distributing my weight in my insteps. We kind of shifted a little weight around, shifted a little weight in my hand, and then just shifted my overall weight around in general to allow me to take a step forward as opposed to a step back. So I was able to gain ground as opposed to losing ground, which made blocking, like gap scheme runs, like duo, power, inside zone. I was able to block those much more effectively just by having Coach Godek fix my false step. So my junior film that I'm putting out there, it's already so much better than my sophomore film because just for the fact of not even having that false step anymore, that was huge. And then junior year was definitely when I started to get noticed a little more. So I was fortunate.
Was that because your film was better, or
the film was better, and then also I was fortunate enough to have a teammate that was a senior, a class ahead of me, that was really good. So he received a lot of attention from college coaches himself. This is our quarterback, Matt Phelan.
Fee.
Yep, call him Fee. Still one of the even to this day, still one of the best athletes I've ever played with. But a lot of coaches were coming in for him, and obviously, his tape was getting out there. But by the time coaches started visiting me, it's because they ended up noticing me on Fee's film. At least that's what some of them told me. So yeah, like they would be looking at Fee, and then they were asking my coaches, but hey, what about I think I was number 50 in high school. What about this number 50 guy? Like, yeah, I mean, Fee looks great, but
and then also
who is this kid?
Also, you get to a point where coaches know who you are because of these camps you're going to.
Yep, right? Yeah. You meet some familiar faces. So yeah, kind of fast forwarding into junior year, your season's over. So the spring of junior year, so this is after signing day for the seniors. So the attention's going to be on you. The attention's on the junior class because you're going to be the upcoming senior class. So all eyes are on you. So coaches are going to start coming to your schools. They're going to start visiting you and pulling you out of class. And then luckily for me, by going to a lot of these camps, I had already built a relationship with a lot of these coaches. So it's kind of funny, like when you get the call, they'll call your teacher, be like, hey, Tom needs to come to the, I think I had to go to the guidance counselor's office. He has a visitor. So I'd just leave class, go to the office, and I'd be like, oh shit, it's Coach Cummings. Coach Cummings was my O-line coach at UConn. I'd be like, oh shit, it's Coach Cummings. Coach, how you doing? So yeah, you already kind of built that rapport with that coach. But yeah, it got to the point where I was getting pulled out of class almost every single day. A lot of different schools, mostly D2s. But yeah, as far as like Division I, it was mostly local. So like my most frequent Division I visitors, my junior year, would be Boston College, UMass, UMaine, University of New Hampshire, and the University of Rhode Island. Those are like my frequent Division I visitors. Then the rest were like D2, some D3s.
So junior season, are you at this point, through all this development you've been going through, are you like the best offensive lineman, hands down?
Like
on your team?
On my team, yes.
I don't want to sound
I don't want to sound cocky, but
No, it's not cocky.
yeah,
I mean, hey,
at that point in time, I was the only offensive lineman being recruited at that level until my senior season, because we actually did bring in a transfer. Connor Gatto, he was actually being looked at by a lot of the same schools that I was. He was an awesome player.
sounds good. So to recap, give no fucks.
Give no fucks.
Give no fucks. You know, there's going to be those good days and bad days. You know, they say the highs and the lows, but showing up, right? Like there's that saying out there. A lot of people, they're just, the winners are the ones that show up.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that show up and just get through it and get back up and do it again.
Exactly. And then be persistent. So I forgot to mention during this spring period, it's usually around March or April, coaches are actually allowed to finally call you. Now, again, it's been probably almost a decade for me. I don't know how much the rules have changed, but the coaches were only allowed to call you, I think, once a month before your senior year. They were only allowed to call you once a month. But on your end, you can call them. So I had a list of coaches that I built rapport with, and it was obvious, it was at the schools that I saw myself going to. So like my top schools, I would make it a point to call them every single week. I want to keep them, I want to keep me on their minds. I want them thinking about me. So I always planned it out like, hey, I'm going to call this coach on this day, and, we're going to build this relationship. And then, by the time I got to my senior season, it got to the point where it's like, hey, I'm calling them, and they'd be like, Tom, like, how did that game go against, like Uxbridge? And it's you build that rapport, and that helps you a lot along the way.
Yeah, relationship building, mentors.
Mm-hmm.
These coaches are serving as your mentor, and they're helping you get to that next level, and that's something that, that's always valuable to have in life, is being able to, network with mentors and figure out how to utilize other people, right? Because you can't do it alone.
Exactly. And then also, so the coaches that I didn't have an existing relationship, so obviously I had those phone calls that I would schedule pretty much every week. Like I would make the effort to call, but the schools where you don't really have your foot in the door yet, I feel like I would send hundreds of emails. And because it's pretty easy. You go to a school's website, you get their athletic staff directory. It's going to show that email address. Now, look, you're rarely going to get a response. It's rare. I would say you'd probably get a response like 10% of the time for a coach that doesn't know you, a school that doesn't know you. But basically, give a brief introduction to everyone, and then always send your film. I mean, that's going to be the most important thing. Always send the tape. When we were in high school, everyone used Huddle, so that's pretty easy. So you basically just send a link into the email, and that's it. And then when you pick a school, I would email the entire coaching staff. So it wouldn't just be the O-line coach. I would go from the head coach. I would even go down to like a graduate assistant. I would email every single one of them. And it was sent hundreds and hundreds of emails. Because what we talked about in that first episode, my goal was to play Division I. So back then there was 128 FBS schools, so Division 1A. So I made it a point of emphasis: email every single one. Well, okay, I didn't do like the SEC or the Big Ten. I mean, when I was shooting for the stars, Wake Forest was me shooting for the stars. I didn't do Bama. I didn't do Georgia. I wasn't wasting my time with that. I was a little more realistic. But, and then FCS, I think at the time there was like 123 schools. Email as many of them as possible.
Absolutely. Don't be denied. If you want something,
you got to go out there and get it.
Go after it.
Because these coaches aren't going to chase you down. You're the one that has to go after them.
There's so many athletes out there, right? Like
there's thousands of people emailing them every single day.
Yeah.
So you got to make yourself stand out. You got to be annoying, but not too annoying, but you have to be annoying. You have to stay persistent. You have to keep the thought of you fresh in their minds.
Absolutely. So, that pretty much wraps up episode 2. Covered everything from the off season before junior season through the season. Next episode, we're going to continue to talk about, the development from the off season before senior year into your senior year, obviously,
and then
more prospect camps.
That's when shit ramps up. So senior year, All eyes are on you. This is... Oh, wait a second. We forgot to talk about Junior Day. The Junior Days.
What about it?
So, all right, but the episode is not over yet. Let's take a seat back.
We're in overtime.
We're in overtime.
That was just the end of regulation.
Someone called Buffalo Wild Wings. It's overtime. All right, so I forgot to mention. So the spring Junior Days. So you get invited to Junior Days. So a Junior Day counts as an unofficial visit. So that means the difference between an unofficial and official. An unofficial visit that comes out of your pocket. So you have to pay for your travel, you have to pay for your meals. An official visit, everything's paid for. You don't get the opportunity to go on an official visit until your senior year. So unofficial visits, so we'll start with Junior Day. Junior Day is something that all schools will have. Every single school will have a Junior Day. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You're still a junior in high school. You get invited, for a campus visit. Oftentimes these Junior Days will revolve around spring practice. So you'll have... you'll watch the spring game or the spring practice. You'll get to see firsthand, the coaches actually coaching their players up. And then, it's all about what are you looking for in the school, So they're going to go through their academics. They're going to show you all their facilities. They're going to kind of talk about, the basic schedule and just what those.
What was the best Junior Day you went to?
So I went to. I went to 3 of them. So my actual junior year, I went to Liberty and the University of North Dakota. Now this was University of North Dakota, not North Dakota State, the powerhouse. But while I was out at North Dakota, I made a little brief visit to North Dakota State and got to see the Fargo Dome because, if you're there, you're not going to not see the Fargo Dome. That's the biggest.
How could you ever miss the Fargo Dome?
Jonathan doesn't even know what the Fargo Dome is. Actually, you do because you watched that playoff game when
Incarnate
Word almost
Word,
upset North Dakota State in the semifinals.
That was actually a really big game.
That was an awesome game. That was an awesome game. But yeah, so University of North Dakota, that was my first Junior Day. I loved it. And this was actually an earlier Junior Day. It wasn't during the spring. So there unfortunately wasn't any spring football to see, and it was fucking cold, man. It was 8 degrees, but the locals were pumped because it was a heat wave for them. It had been in the negatives for the last 2 weeks, so they were stoked about it. But
8 degrees was a heat wave?
Yep, for them at that point in time because this is February. But I love that place. It was a cool school. I definitely could have seen myself playing there.
You're talking about
University of North Dakota. So at the time they were the Fighting Sioux. They changed their name to the Fighting Hawks. They play in the Big Sky Conference, which is considered one of the better conferences in the FCS. It's actually technically considered the best. Because you got teams like Montana State, Eastern Washington, and then you have obviously North Dakota. North Dakota, they made it to the playoffs this year. They got eliminated first round, but they're typically a team they'll make it to the playoffs, but their conference is so stacked that they never win the conference.
So that was your best Junior Day?
That was my favorite Junior Day. Because in the second one I went to Liberty University as well. So that one was actually during the spring. That was actually during their spring game. And they were still FCS at the time. Liberty's an FBS independent nowadays. They really ramped up their facilities and everything since I actually went there. But they were playing in the Big South Conference. They were ready to make the transition to FBS, but it was still quite a few years away. And it's funny. The thing I remember most from that Junior Day was. Someone asked this coach that was showing us around, he's like, "Oh, how many people can fit in the stadium?" He was like, "It sits about 13-2."
13-2.
And I just thought that was so funny. And then the last Junior Day I did was actually my senior year, believe it or not, because this is when I restarted my recruiting, because this is when I made the decision to go to prep school. So I was classified as a junior again, even though I was technically a senior. But in terms of recruiting, I was a junior again. So I ended up going to Wake
So
Forest.
are we going to talk about that the next episode?
Oh, we'll absolutely talk
The
about that.
prep school experience and your decision to go to prep school as well.
Yes,
That'll
yes,
be something
that is something we're going to touch on because we're going to talk. Next episode, Jonathan already mentioned. We're going to be talking about senior year. That's when shit hits the fan. That's when it's go time. I mean, that's
Go time.
That's when you obviously commit to the school that you're going to go to. But yeah, this was a lovely episode. Had a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Once we got done with our case of the giggles, we were good to go. And then we'll just wrap up, by saying, hey,
What's better than this?
Guys being dudes.
Peace.